You are listening to the International Radio Report. Your reactions are much appreciated. Feel free to send them to radioreport@yahoo.com. That is, radioreport@yahoo.com. Thank you.
Welcome, everyone, to the International Radio Report for Sunday, July the 6th of 2025. My name's Sheldon. I'm here with Jill, and we have our usual 30 minutes of news and information from the world of radio for you. We thank you for tuning in to our show. We have a good variety of stories for you today. We'll get going with an update on the situation with the Voice of America. Our first story is headlined, Kari Lake rescinds layoff notices sent to hundreds at dismantled Voice of America. This by Gustaf Kilander with MSNBC. The Trump administration has rescinded the layoff notices sent to hundreds of employees at the Voice of America after staff encountered errors in documents outlining the terms, which could subsequently nullify or delay President Donald Trump's efforts to dismantle the news outlet. The email sent on Friday rescinded the layoff notices from the previous week. The missive was sent by the Voice of America's Human Resources Office to staff based in Washington. About 90% of its union-protected staff live in the nation's capital, the layoff plan the Trump administration sent to Congress earlier this month stated. However, the reporters and support staff aren't being called back to work. The email stated that the agency overseeing Voice of America, the U.S. Agency for Global Media, will be running another RIF in the near future. RIF refers to the acronym for Federal Layoffs, meaning reductions in force. Please be advised that there will be no change to your current status, the email said. If you are currently in an administrative leave status, you will remain on administrative leave. If you were recalled back to duty, you will remain in work status unless otherwise notified. Hundreds of reporters and support staff had already been scheduled to be laid off on September the 1st. Former Arizona senatorial and gubernatorial candidate Kari Lake, now a senior advisor to the U.S. Agency for Global Media, is heading the effort to dismantle Voice of America. She said in an email that she's still set to reduce the agency staff by 85%, according to the New York Times. The email that went out today allows employees to access and update their personnel files ahead of completion of the RIF, said Lake. The Trump administration has argued that Voice of America is a source of liberal propaganda. Trump signed an executive order in March pushing for the dismantling of the global media agency and placed almost all of Voice of America journalists on paid leave. It was the first time its work ceased since it was founded in 1942. Trump said on Wednesday that Voice of America is, quote, a Democratic mouthpiece and the congressional Republicans should kill it. However, the attempt to gut the agency appears to have been delayed because of administrative errors in how the administration has handled the layoff process. Some of the documents sent out last week included errors such as incorrect years of service, birth dates, and veteran status. Voice of America staff who received documents with the errors told The Times. A federal workers union, the American Federation of Government Employees, represents Voice of America staff. The president of the local chapter, Paula Hickey, noted to The Times that the agency had to rescind the layoff notices as many of the inaccuracies violated the contract with the union. If those errors remained unresolved, the union could bring a complaint or initiate an arbitration process. That could eventually nullify the firings. The Global Media Agency was ordered in 2011 to rehire and provide back pay to employees it had fired years previously after a federal arbitrator determined that the layoffs had been made incorrectly. The independent stands for many things, often uniquely so. It stands independent of political party allegiance and makes its own mind up on issues of the day. The Independent has always been committed to challenge and debate. It launched in 1986 to create a new voice, and in that time had run campaigns for issues ranging from legislation of marijuana to the final say Brexit petition.
This is incredible because it shows how everything is rushed. And so there's tons of errors everywhere. I was actually reading an article that this is across all the firings of the different agencies. The fact that they're trying to do this at a fast pace creates tons of errors, and that this means probably tons of legal activity that's going to happen after that, because they're going to say, well, there's an error here, so we can go to court and cancel something here and there. And it seems more money wasted than money that is saved.
There's laws out there, labor laws, that they've just ignored or didn't even think existed properly. And like you say, to jump to make these moves quickly, I guess to try to impress the people who voted for you, oh, we're going to save lots of money. Well, we'll just get this done right away while people still have this fresh in their mind. Now they're finding out that, it's not as easy as you might have thought it was, and you're going to get into legalities that the whole walls could come tumbling down around them at this point, the way these errors are starting to leak out into the public. So The more errors that happen, I think the more people are going to be digging to find even more of them.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting times ahead for sure.
In our next story, we have Bronx apartment owner receives a pirate letter. This is by Nick Langan of RadioWorld. The New York office of the FCC's Enforcement Bureau has sent a pirate letter to the owner of a mixed-use property in one of the 5 New York City boroughs. The commission is investigating a complaint about an unlicensed broadcast in June and November of last year, as well as this past January on 89.3 FM from Hamden Place in the University Heights neighborhood of the Bronx. That's about 2 miles northeast of the George Washington Bridge. Public records indicate that Hamden Realty owns the property, which is classified as a walk-up apartment with ground floor stores. On-site notices identified Exclusive One Realty as the property manager. The FCC addressed the letter to both. The commission said that the transmission observed from the location exceeded its Part 15 rules. The letter, issued under the 2020 Pirate Act, requires a response within 10 days from both real estate companies, providing evidence they are no longer permitting the alleged illegal broadcast at the property. The letter also requests identification of the individuals involved. The Pirate Act allows the FCC to issue a fine of up to approximately $2.5 million if, after the response period, the Commission determines that pirate broadcasting is continuing from the property. The New York City area is one of the well-known hotbeds for unlicensed broadcast activity. A NYC reader identified 89.3 Digital FM WDYM as a long-time unlicensed station operating from the Bronx. The 89.3 FM frequency in the Bronx had been targeted by the Enforcement Bureau in the past, but it is unknown if this operation is linked. According to the Commission's records, 17 pirate letters have been sent to property owners so far in 2025. So what's going to happen with that? So you just told the landlords or the people that own that someone's doing some illegal activity, a pirate radio station. You have to identify them. It's your job because they asked it. How about if, whoever did it just removes everything and says, I don't know. I have no idea. Plus, we still are wondering if there was any money ever recovered from all of these fines by the FCC.
Yeah, they're pretty big amounts of money that I'm sure these people running these stations do not have and would be totally unable to pay.
In a similar story, the FCC targets another NYC property with pirate letter. This also by Nick Langan of RadioWorld. A property owner in New York City has received a pirate letter from the FCC Enforcement Bureau, marking the second letter in a week it's sent to a location in the Bronx. This time, to a residential dwelling. Diana Richards, determined through New York City public property tax records as the owner of a home on Hill Avenue in the Bronx was notified by the Commission of an unlicensed broadcast emanating there on 91.3 FM. It was detected on separate dates this past February. One of our New York City readers who works in the Bronx has heard an unlicensed signal on the channel for some time. The Pirate Act gave the Enforcement Bureau the ability to go after owners or managers of the properties where unlicensed signals are detected. Richards has 10 days to respond to the notice with evidence that the broadcasts are no longer occurring at the property. The FCC can issue a fine of up to $2,453,000 if it determines that unlicensed broadcasts are continuing after sending the pirate letter. We've reported on how the New York City metropolitan area in particular has a high number of pirate operators. David Gorin keeps track of the pirate radio scene in Brooklyn and has for 7 years maintained an interactive map of the operators there. One thing while I was reading that came to mind is, how do you give evidence that the broadcasts are no longer occurring if you don't know where they were occurring?
But yeah, that's true. I'm a little surprised that it's taking them that long between finding the illegal signal and issuing the notice. There's a big gap in there to begin with. And B, why aren't they just going in looking for where this equipment is and where the station is? Get permission from the landlord or the business owner and say, look, we need to go and check out some illegal activity that may be going on. If the landlord knows that, okay, if I let you go in and you find it, you're not going to find me. You're going to find that person. That seemed to me would make a whole lot more sense. But I don't know. They seem to be going through this process of avoiding the person who they think is actually doing the illegal broadcast and going to the owner. In the second case, though, if it's one person in a house, a private dwelling, then they've probably got the right person. Unless this lady maybe has a kid that's playing radio somewhere in the house and she doesn't know it or what have you. I don't know. But certainly New York City, like others, Miami is another big one for pirate activity, Boston as well. So like you said, we'll see if anybody actually ends up having to pay one of those fines. I highly doubt it.
Yeah, because it's very different from the past. They used to show up with like police officers and say, we're going in, we've got a warrant, we are allowed to, go and check out your home, which is very different now. Now it's, deal with it.
Yeah. Even confiscating equipment in the past was done.
Yeah.
Okay, you're on the air, you're not going to be on the air anymore because we're removing all of this stuff. But I don't know. I guess there's different rights now that people have that they can't do this any longer.
Yeah, I guess.
Next, we have an update to a story we did a while back. We had told you about the 2025 nominees for the Radio Hall of Fame. Well, now we have the honorees of the list of people who were nominated. They have now come up with those who will be inducted into the hall. So this comes from RadioWorld. The Museum of Broadcast Communications announced 11 new inductees into the Radio Hall of Fame. They are Tom Carballo, or Mojo, of Mojo in the Morning on WKQI FM in Detroit. Alice Cooper, yes, the Alice Cooper, Nights with Alice Cooper, and Alice's Addict. These are syndicated shows that he has on different rock music stations around North America. Even here in Montreal, we were carrying that on Shom FM. Colin Cowherd is The Herd with Colin Cowherd. That's a sports show. Dee Dee McGuire, Dee Dee in the Morning. Mike McVeigh, McVeigh Media. Martha Quinn, The Martha Quinn Show, which is through iHeartMedia. Bob Lacey and Sherry Lynch, The Bob and Sherry Show. Scott Simon, Weekend Edition Saturday on National Public Radio. Shelley the Playboy Stewart. And Julie Talbot with Premier Networks. 6 were chosen by a voting participant panel of approximately 900 industry professionals. 4 were voted on by a nominating committee, and the inductees will be honored at a ceremony in Chicago in October. So congratulations to all those new inductees into the Radio Hall of Fame.
Yep, congratulations. So what's happening with our sun? Well, our sun this week has been rather quiet, but there was a few coronal mass ejections that sometimes brushed against the planet Earth and didn't really impact that much. Just a little bit unsettled conditions. Overall, even though I would say not in the top shape, the conditions were most days quite good still. And lots of interesting signals out there to listen to. So hopefully the week ahead could be also quiet. Nothing dangerous, even though there's a lot of little sunspots peppered all over the solar disk. There's nothing really major. So it could be a pretty quiet week happening. And this could be very, very interesting radio-wise. Sunspot number 118, solar flux 125. And the way to witness propagation, it's to turn on a radio and listen.
Hi, I'm Eric Cottrell of Lynn, Massachusetts. I get my weekly radio news on the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in beautiful Montreal.
In our next story, NIA launches first Philippines government-run nationwide radio station. This is via Radio Info Asia. The National Irrigation Administration in the Philippines recently launched DWCJ Radio Bayanihan, the first government-run radio station nationwide directly managed by the agency. An affiliate of PBS Radio Pilipinas, the station aims to deliver timely and relevant information to farmers and irrigation stakeholders across the region. NIA Administrator Eduardo Guillen led the station inauguration held at the NIA compound in Panablanca, Cagayan. Guillen underscored the importance of real-time weather advisories, irrigation schedules, and critical updates that could support communities, especially during calamities. The administrator was also the first guest in Radio Bayanihan's maiden live broadcast, which he described as NIA's bridge to broader public service. The station also welcomes other government agencies to use its platform for advocacy and information campaigns. The project is part of Guillen's broader advocacy to promote information empowerment as a key pillar of effective public service. So, radio put into good use to help out and give out more information about farming and whether it goes around anything that could be public service, basically.
We don't hear too many countries sponsoring new government-run nationwide radio stations these days.
Yep.
It's been going the other direction with a lot of governments pulling funding for their national or nationwide stations. So this is a little bit different, heading in the right direction for a change. Some good news to report
Absolutely.
on that front. Our next story takes us to Liberia. A community radio journalist abducted after reporting on a government directive suspending traditional poro and sande activities in Liberia. This comes via Radio Info Africa. A Liberian community radio journalist, Alex Yormi, has been reportedly abducted in Nimba County after reporting on a government directive suspending activities of traditional poro and sande societies. Journalist Yormi, who works for Radio Larweyi in Tapita, was taken on the evening of June the 30th by men believed to be members of the Poro Society. The men reportedly acted on orders from Melvin Duo, General Culture Coordinator of Nimba County. Duo admitted Yormi was taken for questioning after allegedly violating local tradition by broadcasting about the secret society. Duo denied claims of violence or forced initiation, but said that Yormi is being held at the local Poro Society's headquarters and would be released to his family on Tuesday. The Press Union of Liberia condemned the abduction and called for Yormi's immediate and unconditional release. The union urged the Ministries of Internal Affairs and Information to protect journalists from threats and unlawful actions. Sande and poro societies are powerful secret societies in Liberia. Poro is the men's society focused on initiation and social control, while Sande is the female counterpart, also focused on initiation and women's affairs. Both societies play significant roles in social, political, and religious life, often wielding considerable influence within their communities. So this is something I've never heard of before. We dig and we find stories about some really interesting stuff sometimes, and this is one of them. So these secret societies existing in Liberia, doing it is whatever they do, seems that no one's allowed to talk about what they do. It kind of sounds like those things like the Masons and those groups out there that do all these secret things that unless you're one of them, you don't know anything about and you're not allowed to know anything about. That seems to be going on with these two groups in Liberia. So we hope the journalist is back home with family and back on his job. But I guess he won't be talking about the Poro and Sande societies within Liberia.
When I saw this article, I went to online to see a few things and started seeing about these two societies. And I was like, what? Never heard that before. I didn't even know about it.
No, very, very odd situation. But hey, we come up with odd stories sometimes, and there's some really good sources that we dig into and how we find some of these things. So we hope you enjoy stories like this. And again, showing you, that being a reporter and a journalist in some places can be a very dangerous business.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, we have some amateur radio DXPEDITIONS special events.
We have one of the big annual contests coming up, organized by the American Radio Relay League. It is the IARU HF World Championships, 1200 Zulu July 12th to 1200 Zulu July 13th. The objective is to support amateur self-training in radio communications, including improving amateur operating skills, conducting technical investigations, and intercommunicating with other amateurs around the world, especially IARU member society headquarters stations. So the bands will be 160 through 10 meters, no work bands. The modes, either phone, SSB, or CW and CW. And this is interesting. I don't know how many of these member society headquarters stations there are, but they will have a suffix in their call signs during the event of IARU. So that's the International Amateur Radio Union stations. So we'll post up a link with all the contest information and rules on that for you.
Yeah, and there was a lot of these stations on the air also at the beginning of the year because they're celebrating their 100th anniversary this year. So very interesting to follow that. And it's, as a listener, not just ham radio operators, go and tune the bands to find these stations. We have the Sierra Victor 2 Tango Oscar Whiskey / Alpha Mount Athos breaking news. A few sources are suggesting that Monk Posolipios, SV2TOW, has received a license to operate from Doshiaru Monastery, Mount Athos, as SV2TOW/A. Apparently, he's an ex-police officer and has decided to become a monk and live in Mount Athos. At his disposal is some equipment which belongs to the late monk Apollo. More information to follow. That's kind of interesting. A police became monk and now will be an amateur radio operator.
Yeah, that's a really rare activity on amateur radio, that Mount Athos designator as a country, basically, in the DXCC list. So you definitely want to look for that one on the air. The next one is Tango Yankee, and that is Benin. Red, Delta Lima 1 Bravo Uniform Golf, will once again be active as Tango Yankee 5 Foxtrot Romeo between July the 8th and August the 6th, and he will be participating in the IARU HF Championship.
If you miss Radio St. Helena, well, there are amateur radio operators in the island of St. Helena, so Zulu Delta 7 prefix will be on the air. Tim N0UI will be active as Zulu Delta 7 Tango India Mike between July 5th and July 13th. Operations from 40 to 10 meters using CW, SSB, and perhaps some RTTY. An entry in the IARU HF Championship is included. So the QSL will be via the logbook of the world with the OM call, which is N0UI.
Next, we have a couple islands on the air, and this is IOTA. This is a thing that some operators go chasing. There's a big, lengthy list of islands designated as IOTA islands, and there's going to be a couple active coming up. The first one is NA008, which is right here in Canada, Ellesmere Island, and that's just about as far north as you can get in Canada. Pierre, Victor Echo 3, Kilo Tango Bravo is once again active as a Victor Yankee 0, Echo Romeo Charlie until July 24th. His operation is during his spare time on HF using CW, SSB, and FT8, and the QSL is via Mike 0, Oscar X-Ray Oscar, OQRS, and Logbook of the World. And you've actually worked this guy, you said.
Yeah, I've worked this guy at least 2 or 3 times, both voice and FT8. And I believe he works for a mining company. And he's up there about 6 months a year. And in his spare time, he does some amateur radio.
Interesting.
And we have NA009, Devon Island. Jim, N6TQ, is active as call Victor Yankee 0 during the first 2 weeks of July. He will be stationed at the Flashline Mars Arctic Research Station, QRV using an Elecraft K3 and an NFED half-wave dipole off at 40 feet, communications tower in an inverted L fashion. Times of arrival, departure may vary due to the anticipated weather, and the QSL will be via the logbook of the world. And on this, we are out of time.
Thank you for tuning in today, and we always like to hear from our listeners. Our email address is radioreport@yahoo.com. Our show is live streamed and archived at ckut.ca, the website of CKUT-FM here in Montreal. Our Facebook group, which we invite you to join, is International Radio Report. We welcome Marshall Adams of Orange, California to the group this week. And finally, our YouTube channel is available for you to catch our program anytime that is convenient for you, either the current show or previous shows that are stored in the channel. You can find us at youtube.com/@IRR, and we invite you to subscribe to the channel. That will do it for today's show. We thank you for tuning in. Catch us again next week here on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal with the International Radio Report. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Radio-Canada International.
Radio-Canada International.
Radio-Canada International.
Radio-Canada International. Ici Radio-Canada International. Nous diffusons vers l'Europe, l'Afrique et le Moyen-Orient sur 17 820, 15 150, 13 690, 13 650, 11 945, 9 805, 7 235, 5 995 et 5 925 kHz dans les bandes des 16, 19, 22, 25, 31, 41 et 40.